Okay, so get this. What if AI, like, didn't just advise governments, but actually ran them?
Whoa.
We're talking full-on AI governance, like calling the shots, making the
Yeah,
decisions.
it sounds kind of like sci-fi, right?
Totally. But that's exactly what we're diving into today.
I like it.
We've got some seriously thought-provoking excerpts from La Lie et l'avenir de la gouvernance.
Ooh la la.
And then a snippet from Text Calais, which is super interesting. It actually imagines a podcast episode about this very topic.
Meta.
Yeah.
Right. It's funny, though, because we already see AI having an impact on government decisions.
Oh, totally.
Like even now in things like urban planning or economic forecasting.
Yeah, for sure.
So taking it to that next level where it's actually in charge, it's not pure science fiction anymore.
Right. It's like the seeds are already planted.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of this hypothetical podcast in Text Calais,
Yeah.
they have this AI expert named RBI
Right.
and their AI creation RG3.
Interesting.
And they make some pretty compelling arguments for why AI at the helm could be a good thing.
Okay, I'm listening.
One of the biggest ones is this idea that AI could eliminate corruption. Rabiai's point is that AI doesn't have those self-serving motivations that we humans do. Like, they're not driven by greed.
Right. No personal gain to cloud their judgment.
Exactly.
It's a big one.
It's like no more backroom deals, no more shady lobbying.
Decisions would be based purely on data and logic.
Right, not on who's getting paid under the table.
Yeah, but couldn't someone just like manipulate the data the AI is using?
Oh, that's a good point.
I mean, garbage in, garbage out, right?
For sure, data integrity would have to be like rock solid.
Absolutely.
But, okay, let's just say for a minute that we could guarantee that the data is accurate.
Okay, hypothetically.
And unbiased, right? Then the AI could analyze these massive data sets in real time
Yeah.
and come up with policies based on evidence.
Instead of reactions based on, gut feelings or political pressure.
Totally. It'd be a huge shift.
Absolutely.
Like, instead of politicians just reacting to the latest poll or, public outcry, they'd be looking at what the data actually says is best for everyone.
Exactly.
Long-term thinking.
And Arabia also argues that this would lead to way better efficiency too.
Okay, how so?
Think about it. Streamlined public services, like almost no bureaucracy and resources, actually allocated fairly based on real needs.
Less red tape, faster service, and resources going where they're actually needed.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal here.
Right.
But let's be real for a second. Running a government, it's about more than just numbers.
It is.
There's this whole human element, right?
Almost.
Social dynamics, cultural nuances.
Yeah, can an AI really grasp all of that?
That's the big question.
It is.
And this is where things get a bit more complicated.
They do.
So Text Calais, it highlights these potential upsides,
Yeah.
but then it also jumps into the risks and the ethical concerns that come with AI governance.
Right, and that's where L'Aie et l'avenir de la gouvernance really digs deep.
Okay, so let's talk about those risks. What are some of the potential downsides that we need to be aware of?
Well, one major concern is this potential loss of human autonomy.
Okay.
If AI is calling the shots, what happens to our free will? Our ability to shape our own future?
Yeah, do we just become passengers in a world run by algorithms?
It's a chilling thought.
It is. It's like giving up control over our own destiny.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of algorithmic bias, which both sources touch on.
Right. AI learns from data.
It does.
And if that data reflects existing biases in our society,
then the AI could perpetuate those inequalities.
it's like even if the AI itself is neutral,
Yeah,
it could still make biased decisions if the data it's working with is flawed.
precisely.
Right.
That's a huge challenge that we'd have to address very carefully.
So how do we do that?
Well, we need to make sure that the data used to train these systems is truly representative and unbiased.
Which is easier said than done.
It's a massive undertaking.
But
Even if we solve that data bias problem, there's still the question of, can an AI truly understand the complexity of human society?
yeah, can it make decisions that are sensitive to like cultural nuances and ethical considerations? It makes you wonder, are there just some things that are fundamentally human? Things
Right.
that an algorithm just can't replicate no matter how advanced it is?
Like empathy.
Yeah,
The
compassion.
ability to understand the emotional impact of decisions.
Right. And that's where things get really interesting because both sources seem to agree on one key point.
Okay, what's that?
AI shouldn't necessarily replace human leaders,
Hmm.
but it should augment their abilities.
Interesting.
So not a Terminator scenario.
No robots taking over.
Right. More like AI acting as a superpowered advisor,
I like that.
crunching numbers, presenting options, but ultimately humans are still in control.
Exactly. Think of it like having an AI chief of staff
Oh, I love that.
that can process insane amounts of information, analyze all these complex scenarios, and offer data-driven insights.
Okay.
But the final decision-making power still rests with us humans
With all of our messy emotions and stuff.
and our ability to consider the ethical and social implications.
Yeah, so it's more about collaboration than replacement.
Exactly.
That makes a lot more sense.
It does.
But even if we get that balance right, there are still some major challenges to think about,
Oh, for sure.
like security, for example. An AI controlling government systems, it would be a prime target for hackers, right?
Absolutely. The security implications are massive. A breach in an AI-governed system could be catastrophic.
Yeah, no kidding. And then there's the question of who gets to program the AI's decision-making framework in the first place.
Right. Whose values are embedded in that code?
Exactly. And what happens when efficiency clashes with human rights?
These are questions we can't afford to ignore.
It feels like we're talking about a whole new level of responsibility here.
We are. The stakes are incredibly high.
Yeah, they are.
And that's why it's so crucial to be having these conversations now.
Before it's too late.
Before AI governance becomes a reality,
Yeah.
we need to think through all the potential benefits and risks.
And figure out how to mitigate those risks while maximizing the positive impact.
Because the future of AI is ultimately in our hands.
Okay, so we've laid out some of the key arguments for and against AI governance.
We have.
But I'm curious to hear more about this idea of AI augmenting human capabilities.
Yeah,
What does that actually look like in practice?
that's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think that's where l'AI et l'avenir de la gouvernance really shines.
Okay, how so?
Because it goes beyond just the theoretical and starts to explore some real-world examples.
Perfect. Let's dive into those examples.
One area where l'AI et l'avenir de la gouvernance really gets into the nitty-gritty is policy analysis.
Okay.
Like, imagine AI being used to actually model the potential impact of different policy decisions.
So instead of just guessing what the effects of a new law would be, we could actually simulate its ripple effects.
Exactly, before it even goes into effect.
That's wild. We could see the potential economic and social and environmental consequences.
Of all the different options.
Yeah, it could even help us identify unintended
Oh,
consequences.
things we might not have even thought of.
That would be a game changer for policymakers.
It would.
It would allow them to make much more informed decisions.
Data-driven decisions.
But wouldn't that also make the whole process even more complex?
I mean, analyzing all that data,
It'd be a huge undertaking.
it would be complex. But that's where AI shines.
Right.
AI can process these vast amounts of data and see patterns that humans might miss.
So it's not about replacing human judgment.
It's about giving humans better tools to make those judgments.
Exactly.
And this goes beyond just policy analysis.
Okay.
L'AI et l'avenir de la gouvernance also talks about using AI to optimize resource allocation.
How would that work?
So imagine an AI system that can analyze real-time data on things like population density,
Okay.
infrastructure needs, economic activity.
Got it.
And then it uses all that data to figure out the most efficient and equitable way to distribute resources.
So things like funding personnel, even physical goods.
Exactly.
That could be incredibly helpful in something like disaster relief.
Where getting resources to the right place quickly is essential.
Yeah. And it could also help us address long-standing inequalities.
By making sure that resources are allocated fairly based on need.
Not on political influence or anything like that.
Exactly.
Okay, this is starting to paint a picture of a much more responsive and efficient government.
It is.
But I keep coming back to this human element.
I know.
Even with AI assistance, someone still has to make the final call.
They do.
So how do we make sure that human values and ethical considerations are still at the forefront?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's one that both sources really wrestle with.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to establishing really clear ethical guidelines for AI development.
And use in governance.
Right. We have to be very intentional about the values that we embed in these systems.
So we need to think carefully about things like transparency,
Absolutely.
accountability, and oversight.
We need to make sure that these AI systems are auditable,
Okay.
that there are mechanisms in place to hold them accountable for their decisions.
And that ultimately humans are responsible for the outcomes.
Exactly.
It sounds like we're talking about a whole new framework for governance.
We are.
One that takes into account the unique challenges and opportunities that AI presents.
And this framework needs to be developed collaboratively.
Involving not just technologists and policymakers.
But also ethicists, social scientists,
and the public at large.
It can't just be a top-down approach.
Right. So it's not just about building the technology.
It's about building the social and ethical infrastructure around it.
Okay, that makes sense. So where do we go from here?
Well, I think the first step is to have these open and honest conversations about the potential benefits and risks.
Of AI governance.
Right. We need to work together to create a future where AI serves humanity.
Not the other way around.
Exactly.
It's a powerful message. It's not about fearing AI or trying to stop it.
It's about figuring out how to integrate it responsibly and ethically into our existing systems.
Which brings us back to that core question that the hypothetical podcast in Text Calais asks its listeners.
What role do you think AI should play in shaping our world?
That is a question worth pondering. It's not just a theoretical discussion anymore.
It's not.
AI is already impacting our world in huge ways.
And that influence is only going to grow.
So if we want to ensure that AI's development and implementation reflects our values, we need to start thinking about these questions now.
We do.
We need to have those open and honest conversations, educate ourselves about the issues, and make our voices heard.
Because the future of AI is ultimately in our hands.
Yeah.
This deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
It's clear that the relationship between AI and governance is complex.
And there are no easy answers.
Not at all. But I think one of the most important takeaways is that the future of governance isn't about AI versus humans.
It's about AI with humans.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
It's about finding that sweet spot where AI and human intelligence can work together.
To create a system that's both efficient and ethical.
And that's where Yelier and L'Avenir de la Gouvernance offer some really interesting insights.
Okay, like
They talk about this concept of co-governance,
co-governance.
where AI and humans work together as partners.
I like that. It implies a shared responsibility,
It does.
a recognition that we're in this together.
We are.
Mm-hmm.
But how would that actually work in practice?
Yeah, what would the partnership look like?
Well, one example they give is in law enforcement.
Okay.
Imagine an AI system that can analyze crime data
Okay.
and identify patterns that would be difficult for human analysts to see.
So it could help police departments allocate resources more effectively.
Exactly. And even predict where crimes are likely to occur.
That sounds like it could be a powerful tool for preventing crime.
It could, but of course there would be concerns about privacy.
And potential bias.
Absolutely. And that's where the human element comes in.
Okay.
Human officers would still be responsible for making the final decisions.
About how to use that information.
Exactly. They would need to be trained to recognize potential biases in the AI's analysis.
And make sure that any actions they take are consistent with ethical and legal guidelines.
Right? So again, it's about using AI to augment human capabilities.
Not to replace human judgment.
Exactly. The AI can provide the data and the insights.
But humans need to be the ones to interpret that information and make the decisions.
That makes sense. But even with careful oversight, there's still the potential for things to go wrong.
I mean, AI systems are complex.
They are. And they can be unpredictable.
So how do we ensure that these systems are safe and reliable?
Especially when they're making decisions that could have a huge impact on people's lives. That's a critical question. And it's one that researchers and developers are working on right now.
Okay, what are they doing?
They're exploring ways to make AI systems more transparent, more explainable,
Yeah.
so we can understand how they're making decisions.
That's important.
It is. And they're developing techniques to test and validate these systems.
To ensure that they're robust and reliable.
We can't just blindly trust these systems.
Right.
We need to approach them with a healthy dose of skepticism.
And make sure that we have mechanisms in place to identify and correct any errors or biases. This has been a fascinating conversation.
It has.
I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
I agree. There's so much more to explore
But I think we've laid out some of the key questions and considerations.
that we need to be thinking about as we move towards a future with AI playing a bigger role in governance.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential benefits of AI governance,
Yeah.
the risks and ethical concerns, and this idea of co-governance.
Where AI and humans work together.
But before we wrap up, I want to go back to something you said earlier.
Okay.
This idea that the future of AI is ultimately in our hands.
It is.
What does that mean for the average person?
What can we do to shape this future in a positive direction? That's a great question. And I think there are a few things that each of us can do.
Like what?
First, we need to educate ourselves about AI.
Okay.
The more we understand how it works, the better equipped we'll be to participate in these conversations and make informed decisions.
So do our own research, read articles, listen to podcasts like this one?
Exactly, and talk to each other.
Okay.
Have conversations about AI with our friends, family, colleagues.
The more we talk about these issues, the more awareness we raise.
And the more likely we are to find solutions that work for everyone.
But education and conversation are only part of it.
Yeah.
What about concrete actions?
Right. Are there things that we can do to actually influence the development and implementation of AI? Absolutely. One thing we can do is support organizations that are promoting responsible AI development.
Okay.
There are a lot of groups out there advocating for ethical guidelines, transparency, accountability in AI.
So we can donate to those organizations, volunteer our time.
Spread the word about their work.
Yeah.
What else?
We can also engage with our elected officials.
Okay.
Let them know that we care about these issues and that we want them to prioritize responsible AI development.
So write letters, make phone calls, attend town hall meetings.
Exactly.
Got it.
And finally, we can be mindful of how we're using AI in our own lives.
Every time we use a product or service that relies on AI, we're contributing to the data that these systems are trained on.
That's a good point.
So we can make choices that support companies that are using AI ethically and responsibly.
Be informed consumers.
Exactly. The choices we make today will shape the future of AI.
It's up to all of us to ensure that it's used to create a world that's more just equitable and beneficial for everyone.
That's a powerful message to end on. The future of AI isn't predetermined,
We're actively shaping it through the choices we make every day.
and those choices need to be guided by a clear understanding of both the promises and the perils of AI.
We need to approach this technology with both optimism and caution.
A willingness to embrace its potential while also safeguarding against its risks.
Because ultimately, the goal isn't just to create a more efficient government.
It's about creating a more just equitable and human-centered one.
And that, my friends, is a future worth striving for. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been an incredible journey exploring these complex and thought-provoking ideas with you.
The pleasure was all mine. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
That's a wrap on this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration of the ideas that are shaping our world.
So we've talked about policy analysis, resource allocation, but what about how AI could impact things like public services?
Oh yeah, that's a great area to think about. Like imagine a world where AI could personalize public services.
Make them more efficient and responsive to people's individual needs.
Exactly. Instead of a one-size-fits-all approach.
We could have services that are tailored to each person's specific circumstances.
Right. Like, let's say you need to apply for a government benefit.
Okay.
An AI-powered system could guide you through the whole process.
Answer your questions.
Even proactively identify any potential issues with your application.
That would be a huge improvement over the current system.
Which can be so confusing and frustrating.
Yeah, no kidding.
And can help ensure that people actually receive the benefits they're entitled to.
Right, no more getting lost in the paperwork or falling through the cracks.
Exactly.
I see how AI could really streamline things and make the whole process more user-friendly.
For sure. What other areas could benefit from this kind of personalized approach?
That's a good question.
Well, think about healthcare.
Okay.
AI could analyze your medical history, your lifestyle genetic predispositions,
To provide personalized health recommendations.
and even predict potential health risks.
It's like having a virtual health advisor that's always looking out for you.
Exactly. And this could be really helpful for managing chronic conditions.
Where ongoing monitoring and personalized interventions are key.
Right.
It sounds like AI could really empower people to take control of their own health.
It could. What about education?
Oh, yeah. Could AI personalize learning experiences too?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Imagine AI-powered tutoring systems that adapt to each student's learning style and pace.
That would be amazing.
It could help students who are struggling to keep up.
And challenge those who are ahead of the curve.
Exactly. It could help ensure that every student gets the attention they need to succeed.
Okay, so we've talked about AI personalizing public services, healthcare, education. What other possibilities are out there?
Well, l'IA et l'avenir de la gouvernance also talks about AI's potential to improve urban planning and transportation.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Think about AI systems that can analyze traffic patterns,
Okay.
pollution levels, population density,
To optimize traffic flow, reduce congestion.
even design more sustainable cities.
Wow. Our cities could be more livable, healthier, more efficient.
Exactly. And these are just a few examples.
Yeah, I'm sure.
The possibilities for using AI to improve governance are huge,
It seems like the key is to approach these applications thoughtfully and ethically.
with a focus on empowering people and improving their lives.
Yeah, AI should be a tool for good, a way to enhance human capabilities and create a better world for everyone.
Exactly. It's not about replacing human governance.
But about making it more effective, more responsive, more equitable. This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the potential of AI in governance,
It's a complex and evolving field.
but one that holds so much promise for the future.
I agree. And it's a future that we all have a role in shaping.
The choices we make today about how we develop and implement AI.
They'll determine the kind of world we create for ourselves and for future generations.
So as we wrap up this exploration of AI and the future of governance, I think the key takeaway is this. The future is not set in stone.
It's a future that we are creating.
Through the decisions we make, the conversations we have, the actions we take.
And those actions need to be guided by a clear understanding of both the possibilities and the pitfalls of AI.
We need to approach this technology with a sense of optimism and responsibility,
A willingness to embrace its potential.
while also being cautious of its risks.
Because ultimately, the goal isn't just to create a more efficient government.
It's about creating one that's more just equitable and human-centered.
It's been incredible diving into these ideas with you.
It really has. Thank you for sharing your insight.
And to all of you listening out there,
We encourage you to keep exploring these questions
challenge assumptions
and engage in these important conversations.
that will shape the future of AI and the world we all share.